the Start Your Own Business podcast. Hear inspiring startup stories and get reliable expert advice on how to start your business and get off to the best possible start. Brought to you by Startup Donut, helping small businesses succeed.
Hi there, thanks for joining us and welcome to the Start Your Own Business podcast. My name's Fiona and I'm your host. Did you know that more than 320,000 businesses are started each year here in the UK, but that only 40% of them survive 5 years? Whether linked to funding, finance, pricing, invoicing, marketing, premises, suppliers, or a long list of other things, many people make classic mistakes when starting their own business. Some mistakes are relatively small and easily corrected. And even if they're bigger and more damaging, it may be possible to take remedial action and get the business back on track. However, in some cases, new businesses never really get off the ground and fail in their first year because of a classic startup mistake. In this episode, we speak to business advisor, coach and mentor Jenny Bracelin, who herself has started 5 businesses. She reveals 6 classic startup mistakes and explains how you can avoid them. Before we speak to Jenny, let's find out about Sage and how Copilot can help small businesses just like yours.
To be honest, work had been a slog. I'm a designer, but some nights I was chasing invoices like my full-time job. Now Sage Copilot chases my invoices for me. I just need to click a button and it's done. And I get paid 1 week faster.
Sage Copilot is built with over 40 years of experience helping real businesses like Sophia at Solver Design. That's more than artificial intelligence, that's authentic intelligence. Search Sage Copilot to learn more. Working with 21 customers, each round payments came in 7 days faster with Sage Copilot. T's and C's apply.
It's now time to meet our guest, Jenny. Hi there, Jenny. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
I wanted to begin, if I can, by finding out a little bit about your background. Obviously, now you're a successful business advisor, you're a coach, you're a mentor, but you didn't start out, obviously, that way. You started your first business back in the early 1990s when you were just 23. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about that business.
I can, but I think it's probably more useful because I know a lot of your listeners are startups to hear how come I started that business. So my whole school life, I was always going to be a ballet dancer. And that's what I did. I spent all my time doing ballet. And then I had an accident when I was 18 and my whole life changed. So suddenly I did no business training, I just did your basic education. And I had a few years in the wilderness, I think is the easiest way to put that. And then I thought I was in a situation where I was unemployed. I couldn't get a job, because no qualifications. And I thought, what am I going to do? And my dad jokingly said to me, well, why don't you hire out tablecloths? And I went, okay then. And he was like, no, I didn't mean it. And so I kind of thought, yeah, that's easy enough. I know quite a lot about fabric. All my family are into dressmaking. I'm good at customer service because all my part-time jobs were waitressing. I thought, how difficult could it be? And so this was about February and I thought, I'll have it done by, March, April. And 9 months later, after a lot of blood, sweat and tears and a lot of frustration, I eventually started the business and it changed my life completely because I discovered I loved business, which I had no idea about because it's not something I'd ever been interested in or studied. So yeah, I think that's kind of an unusual background. So people always assume I've got like an MBA or something like that because I've done business coaching for 30 years, but I haven't at all. I come from this very creative, innovative, kind of practical background. Like in ballet, you either do it or you don't do it. Whereas in business, I think a lot of people talk about stuff, but either you get the customer or you don't, either you get paid or you don't. And so I'm quite practical. And I love that about myself, when I meet other business people or a lot of business advisors or bank managers. And so they have such a completely different take on things.
Yeah. So you came into the business cold. Presumably you made mistakes along the way in those first kind of early months.
I think, especially the startup phase, I think I made every mistake. It took much longer. I went to 35 banks because I was hiring out, my first business was hiring out tablecloths for events. So if you get married or film shoots. And so I needed to buy tablecloths. I had no money. So I went to 35 banks and they were all like, you're 23, you've got no money, you've got no job, no chance. But one bank was like, that's quite an interesting business. Maybe if you come back with a business plan, I'll look at it again. But what I got introduced to was the Princess Trust. And they were fantastic. So they gave me some training, and they do force you to do a business plan, which is actually the best thing that can happen. I think a lot of startup mistakes come from the fact we don't do a business plan. And I don't care about having 20 pages of whatever. It's more just the opportunity. My business plan was 8 pages, so not long. It's the opportunity to think through what you're doing, who's your customer, how much you're going to make, all that sort of stuff. And then I just did loads of stuff. So I kept going back to the bank, and eventually said to me, I'll match fund the Princess Trust if you call your prospective customers and find out if they want your business. And I thought, cold calling, no, just like, no way, no way. So it took me about 2 weeks to psych myself up. But I called my potential customers and asked those 3 crucial market research questions, which is, I'm thinking of doing this. Are you interested? How often would you want it, and how much? So I rang them up and said, I'm thinking of hiring out tablecloths. Is that something you're interested in? And to my surprise, they were like, oh my God, yes, definitely. Oh, the supplier we've got at the moment is a nightmare. We just want normal box standard tablecloths, just delivered on time, delivered free. We want this, we want that. And they just had a whole rant. And I just took loads of notes. And then I said, how often would you want it? And they want every week, 52 weeks of the year. I thought, this is good. And I said, how much would you pay? And they said, well, actually, if you could do everything we've asked for, we'll pay you slightly more than we're currently paying. And I rang 10 customers and they all said yes. So then I had to throw out my entire business plan, because I'd created these beautiful tablecloths with wonderful fabrics, which they didn't want at all, and throw out all the work I'd spent 6 months doing and start again completely from scratch. And what I did exactly what they asked for. And then that did mean I did no more marketing for the rest of the 8 years I ran that business. So it was the best thing that I ever did.
Actually speak and get what they want from the horse's mouth.
Yeah. And do what they asked, which is, it sounds obvious, but no one does it. No one does it. So ask the customers what they want and then give it to them.
Are there any other sort of classic mistakes from that period that you can share with us?
Just panicking. I think kind of being scared and panicking. So it would take me 2 to 3 days to do my books. And bear in mind, I have 2 customers, because I think I panicked so much. And also I haven't got a background in finance, and I was learning how to do books. My dad was trying to explain it to me, but he was an accountant, and I just didn't understand what he was talking about. And he would just be like, it's so obvious. Why can't you understand it? How can you be so thick? That was the kind of conversation going on at home. And I couldn't get it. Literally 2 to 3 days it'd take me, and I would literally sob over my books, finding it so difficult. And so that was another classic mistake. So I didn't spend too much because I didn't have any money. So that helped.
From there, you went on to start a classical music label, and then you went on to become a business development manager for what was then Prince's Trust, now the King's Trust, and you were working in London. You must have worked, I assume, in that role with hundreds of different types of businesses from all kind of walks of life.
I loved it because you'd never know what were through the door. I probably set up 50 or 60 rappers. So rappers were quite popular, and particularly because I had a music background. So they gave me a lot of the music business customers. But we also did loads of fashion designers, artists. I had lots of people with disabilities. I had, a wonderful deaf client who ended up doing coding for gaming, earning 80 grand a year. I had, blind clients doing Braille translation. Lots of exciting, interesting businesses. A trainer, a magazine about trainers. It's just fantastic, and you just never knew what was happening. And I think, whilst everyone had their own disadvantage in one way, so we had to set up the businesses with whatever they had. It was so exciting, and when you're young, you're quite enthusiastic, and even if you're a bit angry and hate the world, you were still like, I'm going to make it work. And there was that lovely enthusiasm, and all the people who worked for the Prince's Trust had that kind of mentality. So it was a great bunch of people to work with. They were young, enthusiastic, and kind of out to make a difference. So it was one of the best times of my life, actually. And it was quite weird to get a job because they hired me as an employee, and I was a bit like, I don't know about that, because I sold my business and I kind of went for the position thinking it was going to be self-employed, and they went, no, we've got to hire you. And but fortunately I had a fantastic boss, and I did the first year's targets in 6 weeks, And he said, if you can
Blimey.
well, I just discovered I loved it. You know, when you just find something you're really good at and you can just do it so easily. And so my boss said to me, if you can catch up on the previous 4 years' targets, you can have a day a week off. I was like, okay, that's fair enough. That's a good boss. So
yeah, challenge accepted.
Exactly. So yeah, I think one of the best times of my life that was. Yeah.
Sounds fantastic. So you've been a business coach now for 25 years. You're now freelance business advisor as well. It sounds like you've worked with a huge range of businesses. I wondered, out of all of those businesses, if there are kind of classic mistakes that you see repeated time and time again.
Yes. There's 2 mistakes everybody makes. 2 mistakes everyone. Well, there's a few other things as well. But 2 mistakes everyone makes is, one, they don't know what the customers want, as I talked about earlier. And the second is they don't price themselves correctly because they don't take into consideration that it does cost money to run a business. And when you start a business, you don't necessarily understand all the costs. So you price yourself too low. And then there's the whole fear mindset side of things, where people just get themselves caught up in knots with the fear or the mindset of it should work, but it's not working, but it should work, but it's not working. You need to do something about it. Because I think business is ever evolving, and where people think, oh, I've got this dream, I'm going to make it happen, but you've got to evolve with that dream. So yeah, I think not understanding the customers and not pricing correctly and getting paid. Like, why do business if you don't get paid? Oh, no.
Yeah. So why do you think people make those mistakes? Is it purely down to a lack of experience?
That's a good description, actually. I think mostly it is. Very few people I come across have ever done any business training. Yeah. Even just a small start your own business course, or your website's got such an amazing, resources on there. Any of the piece of the resources on there would help considerably. But people seem to look at social media and 10 grand coaches and follow what they say rather than proper, sensible advice. Business is trading goods and services. Everything else is optional. And so I meet loads of people who spent thousands on training, like therapists and things like that, but wouldn't think of spending £150 or £500 on business training that would actually be very useful and talk them through the basics of business, like cash flow forecasts, marketing, identifying what the customer wants, the legalities of running a business, so they're not scared of the tax office or, people are terrified of the tax office. They're quite helpful if you ring them up.
Yeah. And actually that whole idea that often the best people to speak to are the people who have been there, seen it and got the t-shirt, because they can say, actually, here's a shortcut, or this is what I found and this is the mistake that I made, so make sure you avoid that. So, like in your case, you had run your own business, so it was coming from the horse's mouth from somewhere who, you'd been branded by the pitfalls and triumphs of running your own business.
Definitely. My advice is only listen to people who've been there and done it, like made money at it, or experts like your website. Because if you start listening to people down the pub or on social media, it's an illusion, and there's no one's reputation on the line saying this will work for you. And also, there's lots of business advice out there, but it's finding out what's going to work with you, because different personalities suit different things. And I don't think people, a client came to me told she'd gone to see somebody on social media. She'd booked an hour with them, and they told her she needed to make 40 cold calls a day. And she was the shyest woman I've ever met. And I thought, that's never going to happen. But actually what she did was something that would be very easy to send out as a freebie to email people, and then they could just book it, and she never needed to talk to them, which would suit her much better. So I think taking your own personality into consideration helps. So you get a business that suits you rather than just a business that you hate running.
So the purpose of today's episode is to talk really about those classic business mistakes, and we've come up with a list of 6 of the kind of most common culprits of problems in business. And the first one that we were going to talk about is about coming up with a business idea that's not viable. What do we mean when we say a business idea is not viable?
I think business that are not viable is when you haven't thought through whether it'll earn you a living, whether you'll enjoy it, can you afford it, are there the customers? And it can be a variety of things, but essentially if it's not going to earn you a living, then it's a hobby, not a business. And I think we need to be clear about that. And I think in COVID particularly, there was so many, I've got a dream, and I love people having dreams, it's fantastic. But be clear, is it a dream business or is it a dream you want to achieve? And I think people have got very mixed up about what is a dream, what is a business, what's a passion, what's a hobby. And they are very different things.
Yeah.
So I think it's very rare that I come across a business that's not viable, but I often, it's not profitable, they won't earn you a living, it doesn't work. But I often come across people who want to do things that would clearly never work as a business.
So have you got any tips for people to how they can kind of put checks and measures in place to kind of test that before they kind of take the leap into running the business?
Definitely. The Princess Trust, we used to call it test marketing, which is where you test the idea of running your business. So if you want to set up a shop, then rent a market stall for a day and try it out and discover, do customers want it? I had a client who desperately wanted a therapy centre to do nails and holistic stuff. And I just thought it's never going to work where she lived and she would never make enough money. It would barely cover the rent. But she'd found a premises, was all excited. And I said to her, before you sign the deal on the premises, run a market stall for a couple of weeks and see the feedback. And after a couple of weeks, she came back to me and said, there's no way the people in this town will ever pay the prices I would need to charge to pay the rent and cover the costs. Yeah. So my business absolutely will not work or it's not viable. But what she did discover is it was so useful doing the market stall that for the rest of her business, which is another 10 years, she ran a market stall once a month to test products, because what she did instead of running a centre was sell products. So I think testing it, so whether it's a pop-up shop, a market stall, whether it's a therapy day, whether it's just ask a few friends to test it out, you need to test it before you do it, because 90% of problems can be ironed out with some kind of test. I mean, my favourite example is Innocent Smoothies. They all had big corporate jobs and they wanted to create this brand and create these smoothies. And they took some holiday and did the festivals over the summer. And they had two bins. One said, should we do this as a business? Should we leave our job and do this as a business? And one bin said yes, and the other bin said no. And the bin that said yes was like piled with paper cups, and the bin that said no had none in it. So it was very obvious from that it would work. And I think not testing a business idea before you put time, money and effort into it is the biggest mistake people make.
So number 2 on our naughty list, for want of a better word, is people misunderstanding how long it takes to make a sale. I think anyone who's got experience and has run a business before will know that you've got to, for want of a better phrase, kiss a lot of frogs before you make your sale, before you reach the right person within a business or the right person within a market that you need to be speaking to. What advice can you give on that?
I think to follow on test market, then you know who your customers are, so it's much quicker. But if you think about when you buy something, whether it's, a gadget or a Christmas present or a holiday, something more expensive, a house, how long you think about it for? You might think about it for 2 years before you go and buy that thing. And then it might be somebody recommended it, and then you look at their website, and then you think about it, and you might follow them on social media. And then you'll and then you might wait for a sale, and then something happens in your life, you think, right, I'm going to buy it. But that buying cycle can easily be a couple of years. So if you think you're going to open a business and get customers the following day, then you're going to be very disappointed, because it's just not going to work.
So have you got any kind of tips that people can kind of insulate themselves against that kind of protracted length of time where it might take you to make a sale?
Definitely. I think the American idea of a side hustle is quite a good thing, where you start it up on the side, maybe go part-time in a job. So you don't go, right, I'm going to start a business all in. Or if you do, you've tested it first. So you start the side hustle and let it build up. And because I think in your first year of business is your steepest learning curve. That's where you make your most mistakes, where everything takes longer. You haven't got any systems in place yet, perhaps, so it's all a bit chaotic. And so I think just kind of accepting that that's how it is. But it doesn't have to be. If you do your market research well, it doesn't have to be that horrible. But I would say for most people, it can easily take 3 months to get their first customer. And so how are you going to live for those 3 months? I'm not into the whole, it takes 3 years to get your business working. You can. I've had plenty of clients who've set up a business and it's worked from day one, but only because they've spent a year doing all the pre-work. And then it looks like they've magically got it brilliantly done. But actually, they just did all the work beforehand.
And I suppose even if you're super lucky and you set up your business and you make a sale from day one, for many businesses, they're operating on 30 or 60 days, credits. So you're still not getting the money for a while anyway. So,
No.
Even if you do hit the ground running, there's always a kind of gap between what you've spent and what you've got coming in.
No, just no. So when the reason I got into business advice is because when I was hiring out my tablecloths, how it would work is I would hire my tablecloths to a catering hire company who hired tables and chairs. They would hire those to a caterer who made the food, and the caterer would be hired by the party planner, who would then be hired by the client.
Yeah.
So if I waited they wanted me to wait till they all got paid for me to get paid. And my view was, I'm not relying on your incompetence to get paid for me to get paid. I've delivered my service to you, therefore you need to pay me. So I asked for, and it was an industry standard at the time, was 10 days net. So you invoice at the end of the month, then they pay you within 10 days. But they didn't pay me within 10 days. And I was outraged that they didn't pay me in 10 days because I thought, well, it says on the paperwork they should. And so I spent many years working out how to get paid. And so I did get paid in 10 days, or they got a phone call off me every day. You said you'd pay me. Could you pay me tomorrow? Blah, blah, blah. Drip feed. And so now all my clients get paid in advance or on the day. And even when I've worked with big, huge international companies, I always negotiate weekly invoices. So I invoice at the end of the week. They pay me the following week because there's no way you're going on holiday on my money. It's what I used to say when I was younger. We pay everything. If we buy anything from the supermarket or the internet, we pay up front. So I think the culture has changed. So just get paid.
And I think another area that's kind of startups shy away from, and you alluded to this when you were talking earlier about one of the other points, is the actual picking up the phone and making the sales. People shy away from that. People shy away from kind of things they find uncomfortable, money talk or putting yourself out there. So that can be quite another challenge, can't it? People sitting in their comfort zone and then problems backing up. You don't realise that you've not got enough sales coming in until it's almost too late.
Definitely. And I think picking up the phone is vastly underestimated, or sending people a message. Email is very ineffective at getting sales unless that's your campaign, that's your plan. Speaking to someone in real life on the phone works much better. And I think, any business does require some sales, and you have to find a way to do it that suits you and suits your personality. So and particularly for non-payment of debt, the only thing to do is to keep ringing them, the accounts department. If you send emails, they'll just completely ignore it. So I think we do. And that's what I mean about fear and panicking. I think we need to be braver in business. And, it's, for me, a business is a fantastic transformational journey, but that requires us to be braver and do things outside our comfort zone.
So the third one on our list is underestimating how much it's going to cost us to start a business, and sometimes overestimating it. And so we put off making that decision to take the leap. I mean, that's a common problem, isn't it?
It is a massive problem. And I think you can never exactly know how much a business is going to run. But by working it out beforehand, and really, I encourage people to really embrace finance. I had a young entrepreneur in town who was like, my accountant does my finances. I don't do finances, And I said to him, but you want to be like this, he wants to be like this big entrepreneur and run multiple businesses. And I said, the measure of running a successful business, the key measure is money. There are other measures like making a difference and ethics and things like that. But the key measure that differentiates it from being a hobby or a dream is money. So if you're going to ignore money for your entire career, how's that going to work? And he was like, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. So he learned money. Like, I've taught people money, bookkeeping, managing your money, all of that sort of thing. So I think with the cost side of things, you you do have to calculate it. When I started the tablecloths, I asked my uncle, how do I work out how much my electricity bill is going to be? Because I'd never had my own home, so I had no idea how much that was. And he said, well, you count how many light bulbs you're going to have, work out the wattage, and calculate how many hours you're going to have them on a day, and do the same with the heating. And I thought he was having a laugh. I thought he was joking. I didn't realize he meant do that. But actually, you kind of do need to do it, but don't get too much into that detail. But once a year, you do need to calculate all your costs really carefully, and especially at startup phase, to find out what they're going to be. Then add at least another 20%, because your costs will definitely be more than you think, and you'll definitely earn less than you think. So most people overestimate their income to begin with by about 50%, and underestimate their costs by about 20%. And so if you're only going to make 20% profit, you've made a loss. So you need to have everything a bit wider apart to give you a bit more of a leeway, and honestly calculate your costs, which people do. A bit like the phone calls, people shy away from the whole finance side.
And keep on top of them regularly. I mean, we know in our personal lives at the moment that everything is going up in price. So what was true 6 months ago might not be the case now. And before you know it, your costs are kind of creeping into your margins and you're not making the money anymore.
Absolutely. But interesting enough, 50% of the UK population doesn't do a budget. And so we have to accept that everyone's brains doesn't work for how you solve a problem is do a budget, because that's not how people's brains work. My view is, twice a year I sit down and look at my personal, one time I look at my personal finances, one time I look at my business finances. But the rest of the time I do an hour a month. You can do your bookkeeping in an hour, get a cup of tea, sit back, have a look at them and go, right, am I on beans on toast, or can I have a takeaway? And literally, if I've hit my target, I get a takeaway. And so just look at what was the money in? What was the money out? What was the difference? Is it what I expected? Do I need to make any changes? And literally an hour a month would make a lot of difference. Whereas most people spend weeks and nights worrying about money, rather than if you just spend an hour a month doing it, it's done, sorted, no problem. And actually business costs coming down with all the software that you can get. Lots of things that you had to pay, travel and things like that are cheaper.
And actually they're quicker too. So it's not just the cost saving, it's the time saving as well. It's rather than wrangling with paper and pen, it will do a lot of the work for you. Things like accounting software, you can set them up to chase overdue invoices for you. So that's one less job you have to do, that you can spend doing the parts of your business that you actually are good at, or the parts of your business that you love, or the parts that need a bit of attention.
Definitely. And I think when you start up, you don't necessarily set up all your systems correctly. That in a way that works for you, but you do need to get paid, get customers, and as long as you do that, deliver what you offer, then you've got a business. Then everything else can be worked out.
So number 4 on our naughty list, we've sort of talked about already, but the mistake of not managing the financial side of your business. Having that whole discipline and organisation. So not controlling your costs or not managing your cash flow can be a really serious problem for a business quite quickly.
Yes. And it's usually because they don't look at it, or 9% they don't look at it, or they don't want to face the reality of their situation. It's mostly. So it's not, often people think it's a practical problem, but actually it's often a mindset problem of, I don't want to face it, I don't want to look at it, I'm not good at maths, I don't understand it. So I had a client this morning, she's not earning money. Every month she makes a loss. And she knows, she's not stupid. She knows her bank account's going down, her savings going down. But she's still going, oh, well, I'm going to do this course to improve my skills because that'll get me more work. I'm like, no, what will get you more work is doing some marketing and cutting your costs. That will get you more work. But people don't want to deal with that reality. And so we talked about how she deals with finances and things like that. And basically, she doesn't deal with finances. She doesn't open a post. So I think, exactly. But I think so many business owners are, are kind of only just getting by. And yet, with a bit of financial control in your way, it doesn't have to be, horrible budgets and horrible things, just a bit of financial control in your way and getting more customers. You can have a thriving business that gives you the freedom you want. and that isn't just hard and tough. And, like if you listen to people out there, business is terrible. Like I said, small town, business is terrible, or we're not getting the visitors, or there's lots of businesses saying that. But I've got 2 businesses in town. One's a shop, one's a restaurant. They're both doing brilliantly. So it's just that if economic times are tough, you have to do the business side of business better. You have to manage things better, as opposed to take your eye off the wall, put your head in the sand, which I think is what people do.
So number 5 on our list is one that you alluded to when you were talking about your tablecloth business right at the very beginning, about launching a business and people doing it without understanding their customers and how to reach them. What tips do you have on that for our listeners?
I think everyone knows these days you've got to know your ideal client and niching. But when you start up, you have to follow the money. So if you thought my ideal client was going to be this group, but they don't want to pay you any money, you need to suddenly go, well, who will pay me money, and kind of find those customers. So I think people get too attached to the ideal client thing. I think you need to do it, but the purpose of working out who your ideal client is so you know how to attract them. So for example, all my clients, they're all different businesses, but they all love nature. So if I'm going to put a photograph up on social media, I put nature because that will appeal to everyone. So that's useful to know. It's not useful to know, how many children they've got or things like that. So it's what's useful to know, which is what they're interested in and where do they hang out. So if I want to go and find them, where do they hang out? And then you can market to them there. So it's about using that info, understanding your client, then use that info to find them and to give them what they want. Is that what you meant?
Yeah. So, they talk about, you should be on all the social media platforms, but that's not necessarily true. If you're not targeting business customers, then LinkedIn's not going to be the place for you. But if you're looking at marketing to other businesses, you should do. If you're marketing to young mums, maybe it's as simple as a card on the pinboard in the local play cafe is how you will reach other people. So it's knowing where they are and how you can reach them.
Exactly. I think there was a classic example, I think, about customers is, I'd worked in London very successfully with my own clients. When I moved to Ludlow, I went into the market square on a Friday afternoon and I said, are you self-employed? Everyone said yes. I said, would you be interested in business advice? Everyone looked at me oddly. And then I said, how much would you pay? And they started laughing and said, you haven't lived here very long. And which is true. I just moved in. And so I was clear right from that was 1 hour, 10 people. My business was not going to work trying to find customers in Ludlow. How useful was that?
Yeah.
But so what I did to promote myself, because I wasn't known in town, is I took a market stall and put a sofa and put free business advice and see who stopped to talk to me. And there was a real theme. It was kind of women between 30 and 50 who'd left a corporate job, maybe had kids or not, but wanted to get back into work, but wanted to do it via a business.
Yep.
And I kind of, after talking about working with 3 of them, I established they all volunteered for various charities and things like that. And so if I went to a charity day, like a fun day or a charity raising thing, then I would meet all my ideal clients there. And then for the best charity days, I donated a raffle prize of a free business advice session. And I got all my clients in Ludlow for about the first 5 years, I had to get clients elsewhere, but just from charity days. And even if I'd taken the front page in the local paper, it wouldn't have given me a single client because they don't read it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest I think for me, that's the biggest saving time. Like businesses are so busy, business people are so busy. But actually, if you really work out where to find your clients, then you don't need to do social media. So half my clients don't use social media because they don't like it. We find another way for them to find clients that is much more cost effective in terms of time. Because generally, I don't meet anyone that likes marketing. So it's always, how can we get clients in the easiest, shortest, cheapest, quickest way? And people don't often think that. They think, marketing, I need a marketing plan. I've got to do social media and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. As opposed to thinking, what would suit my clients?
Yeah. And making it easy for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think automated booking is the classic one, isn't it? Who wants to contact someone saying, is your diary free? Can I book an appointment? You just want to be able to go, let's book, pick my time, do it. And yet still people are like, oh no, I could never do that to my clients because I need to give them personal service. But actually, I want personal service. I want to be able to book my whatever at midnight on a Sunday night. And I don't want to be having to message you. So I think most things the best outcome you're looking for is win for the customer and win for you. And when you know both of those happens, because you don't want to be contacted on Sunday night either. So that's when you know your business is working, when you're finding these win-win solutions rather than doing what you think you should do, or doing what everyone else is doing, those sort of things.
So our final mistake on our list is not having kind of reliable systems and processes in place. And we're not talking necessarily about your accounting system, although it may be, but it's about all your information and records. How can this, impact a business if they haven't got those processes in place?
Well, there's a lovely accountant who lives up the road that is fantastic, and I'm desperate to refer her, but I can't because she takes about 6 weeks to get back to you by email. And I just think, well, would I trust her to submit my tax return? And it's so annoying because she's a lovely, lovely woman and absolutely one of the most exciting people to talk about tax to. But I can't refer her because she's so unreliable because her systems are so poor, and actually her reputation has really suffered. And not only that, is she can't charge a lot because she's not going to get customers who are willing to pay good prices because she's so ineffective. So she ends up with the clients who penny pinch, who quibble about price. So then she doesn't get paid always either. So I think on a very basic level, you just need to be a little bit organized. But people, just for what you need, you don't need the best systems and the best software and the best this. You just, I've got a few ring binders, all my tools that I use, one ring binder, pull it out, flick it through, right, that's the tool or tip that you need. Just be a little bit organized, I think, to make your life work. So if you start doing things more than 2 or 3 times, just get organized. I think today with AI and ChatGPT and Gemini, it's even easier. So as a dyslexic, I'm not great at writing reports. They take me quite a long time. Whereas I can dictate them into one of those programs that still sounds like me, but they correct all the grammar and summarize it and put headings. But there's lots of things now to make business work more efficiently. And I think that's going to happen even more so. So whereas I think you can run a business sort of 2 hours a week apart from the delivery, I think it could be even less soon because so much stuff is automated. Obviously, it goes wrong occasionally, but you just need to do what works. Otherwise, you're making your life hard for yourself, really.
And I think from my kind of experience, when you're working with people who aren't organised, it's very easy for things to then fall into, kind of dispute. Well, you said this, or I thought we were doing that. And if you haven't got a record of things, you can then go round chasing your tail in circles, trying to get to the bottom of what should be happening and who, what should be delivered, or what the payment agreement was and things like that. So you can waste a lot of time, and you can end up getting into quite costly disputes with people if it escalates out of control, just because you haven't kept a decent record of what's been agreed.
Absolutely. I mean, anything legal needs to be kept in writing. So payments, exactly you say, payments, legal invoices, agreements definitely need to be kept in writing and filed in a way. I mean, the only reason to file something, you can find it again. So definitely. Or that would be a horrible minefield to go down, especially if you do big jobs like 9-month jobs, because you could easily not get paid for that.
So there's loads of tips and advice there that we've covered there, Jenny. If you had to kind of wrap up those big mistakes, what advice would you give to people to help them avoid those common pitfalls?
I think understand your customers, take control of your money, and enjoy it. Business is a really enjoyable, exciting, wonderful thing. And I think people get bogged down sometimes and forget that. I mean, my favourite conversation in business is, Jenny, would you like a pay rise? Yes, I'd love a pay rise. Thank you. We forget those sort of things. And if you don't manage your money, can't give yourself a pay rise. Whereas, I think, right, give yourself a pay rise every year, give yourself a bonus. So how do I make that work? And when you start thinking, right, be a good boss to yourself, give yourself time off, give yourself a pay rise. To do that, you've got to be the one managing the money. You've got to be the one making sure you've got enough work. And so just look after yourself.
That's brilliant. Before I let you go, Jenny, can you tell people where they can find you online and contact you?
Of course. So the best thing to do is just book a free discovery call with me and talk to me one-to-one. I am on socials, but very, very slightly, which is LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram. But normally about twice a week for about half an hour. That's my socials, because I meet people in person, then they stalk me on social, their words, And then when they get a problem in their business, that's when they book. So that's why I do social. So it's not to engage, which everyone says it should be about engagement, but that I don't need to, because that's not what my clients want. So give your clients what they want, and then they pay you and love you.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure that we share links to all of that in the summary notes that will accompany this episode. But all that remains to say is thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today, Jen. It's been really interesting, and loads of great tips in there so that people can set up on the right foot and avoid those potholes on their startup journey. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
When you start your business, you don't always know what you don't know, and this can mean it's inevitable that you'll make some mistakes along the way. That's why it's always helpful to speak to someone who's been there, seen it, and got the t-shirt. As a business mentor, Jenny's worked with hundreds of businesses from all kinds of backgrounds and across all sectors, so she was able to share loads of great advice on avoiding the common startup mistakes. Things like, are you sure that your business is viable? Are you offering a service or goods that people actually want and are prepared to pay you for? Do you know how long it will take to make sufficient sales so that you can pay yourself a wage, and what steps you can take to survive that setup period? Do you know what it will cost to start your business? As Jenny's pointed out, many businesses vastly overestimate sales and underestimate costs. Are you prepared to manage the financial side of your business? Do you truly understand your customers and how you can reach them? And do you have the systems and processes in place to run a tight ship? We'll include useful advice and resources related to this episode, as well as links to Jenny and the summary notes, and you'll find these at www.startyourownbusinesspodcast.co.uk. You can also learn more about the sponsor of this episode, Sage, and how Copilot can help you and your small business. If you've enjoyed the show, please hit follow. That way you'll be notified about new episodes as soon as they drop. All that remains is for me to thank Jenny once again for taking the time to talk to us today. Until next time, all the best.